Who's there? Come closer. I have to tell you before it's too late.
The anniversary card sat on my kitchen counter like a piece of evidence at a crime scene. 25 years of marriage, and my wife Sarah couldn't even be bothered to come home for dinner. The lasagna I'd spent 3 hours making was growing cold in the oven, and the bottle of wine I'd splurged on, a $90 Cabernet that cost more than most people spend on groceries, sat unopened next to 2 plates that would never be used. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm 48 years old. I used to be an engineer at Morrison Industries until the layoffs hit 3 years ago. Now I restore classic cars in my garage and try to pretend that working with my hands instead of my brain was always the plan. The truth is, I'm good at it. Maybe better than I ever was at engineering. There's something honest about fixing what's broken, something pure about taking a rusted-out Camaro and making it purr like it did in 1969. But tonight, staring at that pathetic anniversary setup, I felt like the most broken thing in the house. My phone buzzed. A text from Riley, my 19-year-old daughter. Dad, Mom says she's working late again. She told me to tell you to enjoy your evening alone. Sorry. Love you. I stared at that message for a long time. Sarah was a partner at Whalel, Klein & Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. She specialized in corporate litigation and made 3 times what I ever did as an engineer. She was brilliant, ruthless, and lately, almost never home. Working late, I muttered to myself, taking a swig of beer straight from the bottle. On our anniversary, the house felt enormous around me. We'd bought it 15 years ago when Sarah made partner and my engineering salary was still decent. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a 2-car garage that I'd converted into my workshop. It was supposed to be our dream home. Now, it felt like a mausoleum. I was halfway through my second beer when the phone rang. The caller ID showed County General Hospital. Mr. Mitchell, this is Officer Patricia Valdez with the city police. We found your wife in a motel room about an hour ago. She's in critical condition at County General. You need to come down here right away. The beer bottle slipped from my hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. What happened? Is she okay? Sir, I can't discuss details over the phone. Just get down here as fast as you can. I knew. Even before I hung up the phone, even before I grabbed my keys and ran to my truck, I knew exactly what this was about, and I knew who she was with. The drive to County General took 23 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Sarah hurt, Sarah dying, Sarah with him. Nolan Pierce, 38 years old, tech consultant, drives a silver BMW, and has been sniffing around my wife for the past 6 months. I'd seen the way he looked at her at firm parties, the way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes. I'd mentioned it to Sarah once, and she'd called me paranoid and jealous. Maybe I was paranoid, but I wasn't wrong. The emergency room at County General smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Officer Valdez was a short, stocky woman with tired eyes who looked like she'd seen too much of humanity's worst impulses. Mr. Mitchell, your wife was found unconscious at the Sunset Motel on Route 9. She'd been drinking heavily and appears to have fallen and hit her head on the bathroom sink. She's stable now, but she has a concussion and some nasty bruises. Was she alone? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Officer Valdez hesitated. There was evidence that someone else had been in the room, but they were gone by the time we arrived. The desk clerk said she checked in with a man matching the description of someone named Nolan Pierce. Do you know him? Yeah, I said. I know him. They let me see her after another hour of paperwork and questions. Sarah lay in the hospital bed looking small and fragile, her usually perfect blonde hair matted with blood, her designer dress torn and stained. Her purse sat on the bedside table, and I could see her phone sticking out of it, the screen lighting up every few seconds with new messages. I picked up the phone. 17 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from Nolan. Baby, are you okay? The cops came. I had to leave. Call me when you get this. Sarah, please answer. I'm so sorry, I panicked. We need to talk. I scrolled through the messages, my hands shaking with rage. This wasn't some one-night mistake. This had been going on for months. There were references to other meetings, other hotels, other lies she'd told me about working late. David? Sarah's voice was weak and slurred from the painkillers. What are you doing here? I'm your husband, I said quietly. Where else would I be? She tried to sit up and winced. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you were screwing another man in a cheap motel on our 25th wedding anniversary while I sat at home with a lasagna and a bottle of wine, waiting for my wife to come home." Sarah's face went pale. "David, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me for months? That while I've been busting my A trying to keep our family together after losing my job, you've been playing house with some tech bro who drives a BMW and probably makes more in a month than I make in a year? It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Sarah? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly like that." She started crying then, big crocodile tears that might have worked on me 6 months ago. But 6 months ago, I still believed my wife loved me. "I need some air," I said, standing up. "The doctor says you'll be fine. I'll be back tomorrow to take you home." "David, wait." But I was already walking away. I found Nolan's BMW in the hospital parking garage, tucked away in a corner spot like he thought nobody would notice it. The silver paint gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and I could see a gym bag in the back seat. Probably had a change of clothes in there. Smart man, planning ahead for his affair. I'd brought my keys with me, and the sharp edge of my house key made a satisfying scraping sound as I dragged it along the entire driver's side of his precious car. Then I walked around to the passenger side and did it again. For good measure, I popped the hood. He'd left it unlocked, the arrogant bastard, and yanked out a few key wires. Nothing that would cause permanent damage, but enough to make sure he wasn't driving anywhere tonight. I was just closing the hood when I heard footsteps behind me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I turned around slowly. Nolan Pierce stood about 10 feet away, still wearing the same clothes he'd probably had on when he was screwing my wife. His hair was messed up, his shirt was wrinkled, and he looked like a man who'd had a very bad night. "I'm sending a message," I said calmly. "Did you get it?" "You're crazy. I'm calling the cops." "Go ahead. I'm sure they'd love to hear about how you abandoned my wife in a motel room after she cracked her skull open. Real classy move, by the way. Nothing says I love you like leaving someone bleeding on a bathroom floor." Nolan's face flushed red. "She fell. It was an accident." "And you running away like a coward? Was that an accident too?" He took a step toward me, trying to look tough. "Look, old man, I don't know what Sarah told you, but..." I moved faster than he expected. 3 years of unemployment had given me plenty of time to get back in shape, and I'd been spending a lot of hours at Ricky's gym downtown, working out my frustrations on heavy bags and speed bags. Nolan might have been 10 years younger than me, but he was soft, corporate soft. I grabbed him by his expensive shirt and slammed him against his ruined car. "Let me make something very clear to you, Nolan. That woman up there in the hospital bed is my wife, the mother of my children, and you left her bleeding and unconscious so you could save your own skin. I didn't know she was hurt that bad." "Bees?" I pressed my forearm against his throat, not hard enough to hurt him, but hard enough to get his attention. "You knew exactly how bad she was hurt, and you ran anyway. You want to play with fire? Fine. But when you get burned, don't come crying to me." I let him go and stepped back. Nolan slumped against his car, gasping. "Stay away from my wife," I said. "Stay away from my family. And if I ever see you again, we're going to have a much longer conversation." I walked away, leaving him standing next to his vandalized BMW in the fluorescent-lit parking garage. My hands were shaking with adrenaline and rage, but for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The drive home was a blur. I kept thinking about Sarah lying in that hospital bed, about the messages on her phone, about the look in Nolan's eyes when I had him pressed against his car. Part of me wanted to go back and finish what I'd started. But the smarter part of me, the part that had gotten me through 25 years of marriage and 2 daughters and a career that ended in pink slips and unemployment checks, told me to be patient. Revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say, and I was just getting started. When I got home, the house felt different. Smaller somehow, more like mine and less like ours. I cleaned up the broken beer bottle, threw away the cold lasagna, and opened that $90 bottle of wine. If Sarah wasn't going to be here to drink it with me, I might as well enjoy it myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe, my 22-year-old daughter who was finishing her senior year at State University. "Dad, I heard about Mom. Is she okay? What happened?" I stared at that message for a long time, trying to figure out how to respond. How do you tell your daughter that her mother is a cheating liar who got hurt while screwing another man? How do you explain that the family she grew up in was built on lies and pretense? "She's fine," I typed back. "Just an accident. She'll be home tomorrow. It wasn't the truth, but it wasn't exactly a lie either. Sarah would be home tomorrow, and then we were going to have a very long conversation about the future of our marriage. I was on my second glass of wine when my phone rang. Sarah's best friend, Jenna Walsh, was calling. "David, I just heard about Sarah. Is she okay?" Jenna was a real estate agent who specialized in high-end properties and gossip. She and Sarah had been friends since college, and she knew everything about everyone in our social circle. If I wanted word to get around about Sarah's accident, Jenna was the perfect person to tell. "She's fine," I said, making my voice sound tired and stressed. "Just a little banged up. She was at some motel working on a case, apparently. You know how dedicated she is to her work." "A motel? That's strange. What kind of case would require her to be at a motel?" "I don't know all the details, Jenna. I'm just glad she's okay." I paused for effect. Although the police said there was evidence someone else had been in the room with her, another lawyer maybe. You know how these corporate cases can get complicated. I could practically hear Jenna's gossip radar pinging. "Another lawyer? Do you know who?" "Someone named Nolan Pierce. He's a consultant or something. Works with the firm sometimes." "Nolan Pierce," Jenna repeated, and I could tell she was writing it down. "I'll have to ask around, see if anyone knows him." "I'm sure it's nothing," I said. "Just business. You know Sarah would never do anything to jeopardize our marriage." After I hung up, I smiled for the first time all day. By tomorrow morning, half the city would know that Sarah Mitchell had been found in a motel room with another man. The truth has a way of getting out, even when people try to hide it, especially when they try to hide it. Sarah came home the next afternoon looking like she'd been hit by a truck, which, in a way, she had. The truck of consequences, driven by her own bad choices. She was moving slowly, still dizzy from the concussion, and she kept touching the bandage on her forehead like she couldn't believe it was there. I helped her into the house, playing the part of the concerned husband, but inside I was cold as ice. "The girls want to come see you," I said as I helped her onto the couch. "I told them you were in an accident." "What kind of accident?" she asked quickly. "I didn't give them details. I figured you'd want to tell them yourself." Sarah relaxed slightly. "Thank you." "Although I did have an interesting conversation with Jenna last night, she seemed very concerned about you being at that motel with Nolan Pierce." Sarah's face went white. "David, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You're a lawyer. Explaining things is what you do for a living." I sat down in the chair across from her, the same chair where I'd waited for her to come home for dinner the night before. "So explain. It's not what you think." "What I think is that my wife of 25 years has been having an affair with a man 10 years younger than her, and last night she got hurt while they were screwing around in some cheap motel. What I think is that her lover ran away and left her bleeding on the bathroom floor because he was more worried about saving his own A than taking care of her. What I think is that she's been lying to me for months, maybe longer." I leaned forward. "So please, Sarah, explain to me how it's not what I think." She started crying again, but this time it felt different. More real somehow. Like she was finally understanding the magnitude of what she'd done. "It just happened," she said. "I didn't plan it. Nolan and I were working on the Henderson case together, and we were spending a lot of time together, and one thing led to another." "When? What? When did it start? I want dates, Sarah. I want to know exactly how long you've been lying to my face." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. 6 months ago, maybe 7. 7 months. While I was struggling to find work after the layoffs, while I was trying to figure out how to reinvent myself at 48 years old, while I was lying awake at night worrying about our mortgage and our daughter's college tuition, my wife was screwing around with some tech consultant. "Do you love him?" I asked. The question seemed to surprise her. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated." "It's really not complicated, Sarah. Either you love him or you don't. Either you want to be married to me or you don't. Either you want to work on fixing what's broken between us, or you want to throw away 25 years for some midlife crisis with a man who abandoned you the second things got messy." "He didn't abandon me. He was scared. The police came, and he panicked." "He left you unconscious and bleeding, Sarah. What if you died? What if that head injury had been worse? You'd be dead, and he'd be at home pretending nothing happened." She didn't have an answer for that. "I want him gone," I said. "Out of your life, out of our marriage, out of our family. If you want to save this marriage, if you want to save our family, then you cut all contact with him. Today. David, It's not that simple. We work together, then quit. I can't just quit. I'm a partner in the firm. I have responsibilities. You have responsibilities to your family too, or at least you used to. Sarah looked at me for a long time, and I could see her trying to decide which life she wanted more. The life she'd built with me over 25 years, or the exciting new life she'd been exploring with Nolan Pierce. I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need, I said, standing up. But while you're thinking, you can do it somewhere else. I want you out of this house. David, you can't be serious. This is my home too. Your home is wherever you want to make it, Sarah. If that's with him, then go be with him. If it's here with me, then prove it. Where am I supposed to go? I just got out of the hospital. I'm sure Nolan would be happy to take care of you. After all, he's the one who got you hurt in the first place. I walked to the front door and opened it. I'll pack a bag for you. You can stay at Jenna's or get a hotel room or move in with your boyfriend. I don't really care, but I'm not going to sit here and play house with a woman who's been lying to me for 7 months. The girls will never forgive you for this. The girls don't know the whole story yet, but they will. Sarah struggled to her feet, still unsteady from the concussion. You're making a mistake, David. If you throw me out now, there's no coming back from this. You made that choice when you started screwing around with Nolan Pierce. I'm just dealing with the consequences. I went upstairs and packed a suitcase with her clothes, toiletries, and medications. When I came back down, she was sitting on the couch with her phone pressed to her ear. Jenna, it's Sarah. I need a place to stay for a few days. David and we're having some problems. I set the suitcase down next to the front door and waited. Sarah finished her phone call and looked at me with something that might have been regret. Jenna's coming to pick me up, she said. Good. That'll give you plenty to talk about. 20 minutes later, Jenna's white Mercedes pulled into our driveway. I watched from the window as Sarah limped out to the car, carrying her suitcase and what was left of her dignity. Jenna got out to help her, shooting angry looks back at the house. After they drove away, the house felt different again. Quieter, but also cleaner somehow. Like I'd finally started cleaning out an infection that had been festering for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley. Dad? What's going on? Mom called me crying, saying you kicked her out of the house. Then another from Chloe. How could you do this to her when she's hurt? What kind of man throws his wife out after she's been in an accident? I turned off my phone and opened another beer. My daughters would understand eventually, or they wouldn't. But either way, I was done pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I was done being the understanding husband who looked the other way while his wife destroyed their marriage. It was time to start fighting back. The next few days were a blur of angry phone calls, nasty text messages, and cold shoulders from people I'd considered friends for years. Sarah had apparently told her version of events to anyone who would listen, painting herself as the sufferer of a heartless husband who'd thrown her out while she was recovering from a head injury. She'd left out the part about Nolan Pierce, of course. My first clue that the tide was turning against me came when I walked into Murphy's Tavern on Thursday night. Murphy's was my regular spot, the place where I'd been drinking beer and watching games with the same group of guys for the past 15 years. But when I walked through the door, the conversation stopped, and several people suddenly found their drinks very interesting. Hey, Dave, said Tom Brennan, one of my oldest friends. Tom and I had worked together at Morrison Industries before the layoffs. We'd been through a lot together. How's Sarah doing? She's fine, I said, sliding onto my usual bar stool. Recovering. That's good to hear. Tom's voice was carefully neutral. Jenna Walsh was in here yesterday. She had some interesting things to say about what happened. I ordered a beer from Mickey, the bartender, and waited. I had a feeling I knew where this was going. She said you threw Sarah out of the house while she was still hurt from her accident, Tom continued. Said you wouldn't even let her explain what happened. Did she tell you what Sarah was doing at that motel, Tom? Tom shifted uncomfortably. She said Sarah was working on a case, meeting with a client or something. At the Sunset Motel at 10 o'clock at night? On our anniversary? Look, Dave, I don't know all the details. The details are that my wife was screwing another man, and when she got hurt, he ran away and left her there. Those are the details, Tom. The bar got very quiet. I could feel everyone listening, even the people who were pretending not to. Come on, Dave, said another voice. Jim Kowalski, who lived 3 houses down from us and whose wife played tennis with Sarah twice a week. Sarah would never do something like that. You guys have been married for 25 years. 25 years of marriage doesn't make someone incapable of cheating, Jim. It just makes the betrayal hurt more. You don't have any proof, Jim said. You're just making accusations because you're angry. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the screenshots I'd taken of Nolan's text messages to Sarah. I'd saved them before the hospital staff made me put her phone back in her purse. Here's your proof, I said, sliding the phone across the bar. Jim looked at the messages, his face getting redder with each one he read. Tom leaned over to look too, and I watched his expression change from skepticism to shock to something that might have been pity. Jesus, Dave, Tom said quietly. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Nobody knew. That was the point. I put my phone back in my pocket. Sarah's very good at keeping secrets. It's what makes her such a good lawyer. But Jim wasn't ready to let it go. Even if this is true, throwing her out while she's hurt was a pecker move. You could have waited until she was better. Could I? How long was I supposed to wait, Jim? Until she was fully recovered so she could go back to screwing her boyfriend. Until she decided whether she wanted to stay married to me or run off with some tech consultant who makes more money than I ever will? That's not the point. That's exactly the point. I stood up, leaving my barely touched beer on the bar. My wife has been lying to me for 7 months. She's been using our joint credit cards to pay for hotel rooms where she screws another man. She missed our anniversary dinner because she was too busy getting laid to come home to her husband. And when she got hurt, her lover abandoned her like a piece of garbage. I looked around the bar at the faces of men I'd known for years, men whose wives had probably filled their heads with Sarah's version of events. But somehow I'm the bad guy because I didn't want to play house with a cheating wife who can't decide which man she wants to be with. I threw a 20 on the bar and walked toward the door. Dave, wait, Tom called after me. I turned around. You want to take her side, Tom? Fine. You want to believe that I'm some kind of monster who throws injured women out in the street? Go ahead, but ask yourself this. If it was your wife, if Linda had been screwing around on you for 7 months, what would you do? Would you just smile and pretend everything was fine? Tom didn't have an answer for that. I walked out of Murphy's knowing I'd probably never be welcome there again. These men had made their choice, and it wasn't me. Their wives had convinced them that I was the villain in this story, and it was easier for them to believe that than to consider the possibility that any of their own wives might be capable of the same betrayal. But I wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. When I got home, there was a message on my answering machine from my lawyer, Patricia Hendricks. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in divorce cases, and I'd hired her 3 days ago. David, it's Pat. I've got some interesting information about your wife's boyfriend. Call me back when you get this. I called her immediately. I did some digging on Nolan Pierce, Pat said without preamble. Turns out he's got a bit of a reputation around town. This isn't his first affair with a married woman. In fact, he seems to make a habit of it. What do you mean? I mean, he's been involved with at least 3 other married women in the past 5 years. 2 of them ended up getting divorced. The 3rd one is still married, but her husband doesn't know about the affair. I felt a cold anger settling in my chest. So he's a professional homewrecker. Looks that way. And here's the interesting part. In both of the divorce cases, the women ended up losing a significant amount of money. Nolan has expensive tastes, and he's very good at convincing his girlfriends to pay for them. You think he's using Sarah for money? I think he's using her for whatever he can get. Money, connections, Zex, whatever. And when he's done with her, he'll move on to the next married woman with a good income and low self-esteem. I thought about Sarah lying in that hospital bed, asking me if I thought she was still beautiful. I thought about the expensive clothes she'd been buying lately, the jewelry I'd assumed she'd purchased for herself. What else did you find out? Well, here's where it gets really interesting. I pulled the credit card records for your joint accounts. Your wife has been spending a lot of money on hotels, restaurants, and gifts over the past 7 months. We're talking about $15,000, Dave. Money that came out of your joint accounts to pay for her affair. $15,000? Money we'd been saving for Riley's college tuition. Money I'd been worried about since losing my job. Can we get it back? We can certainly try. In a divorce proceeding, we can argue that she used marital assets to fund an extramarital affair. It's called dissipation of marital assets, and judges don't look kindly on it. Good. What else? I'm still working on it, but I think we're going to have a very strong case, especially if we can prove that her affair affected her work performance or created conflicts of interest at her law firm. After I hung up with Pat, I sat in my workshop for a long time thinking. I've been married to Sarah for 25 years. I'd loved her, supported her career, helped raise our daughters, and tried to be a good husband. And she'd repaid me by screwing around with a man who made a living destroying marriages. But if Sarah wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Marcus Webb was an investigator who'd done some work for Morrison Industries back when I was still employed there. He was expensive, but he was good at finding out things people didn't want found out. Marcus, it's Dave Mitchell. I need your help with something. Marcus Webb looked exactly like what you'd expect a private investigator to look like. Average height, average build, forgettable face, and clothes that wouldn't stand out in a crowd. He was the kind of man who could follow you for a week without you ever noticing he was there. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the waitresses minded their own business. So, your wife's been cheating, Marcus said, stirring sugar into his coffee. And you want to know everything there is to know about the boyfriend. I want to know everything there is to know about both of them, I corrected. I want to know where they go, what they do, how long this has been going on, and whether there are any other surprises waiting for me. That's going to cost you. How much? $5,000 plus expenses, and that's just to start. If this gets complicated, the price goes up. $5,000 was a lot of money for someone who'd been unemployed for 3 years, but Sarah had spent $15,000 on her affair. I figured I was entitled to spend a little money of my own. Do it, I said. Marcus nodded and pulled out a small notebook. Tell me everything you know about Nolan Pierce. I told him about the text messages, the motel incident, the fact that Pat Hendricks had discovered this wasn't Nolan's first affair with a married woman. Marcus took notes and asked questions, and by the time we were done, I felt like I'd just hired a weapon instead of an investigator. One more thing, I said, as we were getting ready to leave. I want to know about my wife's friend, Jenna Walsh. She's been very involved in spreading Sarah's version of events around town, and I have a feeling there's more to it than just friendship. You think the friend is involved somehow? I don't know, but Jenna's the one who's been telling everyone that I'm a monster for throwing my injured wife out of the house. She's been very vocal about defending Sarah, and it seems a little over the top, even for a best friend. Marcus made another note. I'll look into her too. 3 days later, Marcus called with his first report. You're going to want to sit down for this, he said. I was in my workshop, rebuilding the engine on a 1967 Mustang that belonged to a client from across town. Working with my hands helped me think, and I'd been doing a lot of thinking lately. What did you find? Let's start with Nolan Pierce. This guy's a real piece of work. He's 38 years old, never been married, and he's got a pattern of targeting older, successful women, usually lawyers, doctors, or business executives, women with money and status who are feeling neglected by their husbands. How many women are we talking about? In the past 5 years? At least 6 that I can confirm. Probably more. He's very good at what he does, Dave. He makes these women feel special, tells them they deserve better than their boring husbands, and then he starts asking for favors. Money, connections, introductions to their wealthy friends. It's a very sophisticated operation. I felt sick. And Sarah fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. But here's the thing. I don't think she was his primary target. What do you mean? I think someone else set this up. Someone who knew Sarah would be vulnerable, who knew exactly which buttons to push to make her susceptible to Nolan's act. Who? Your wife's best friend, Jenna Walsh. I stopped working and gave Marcus my full attention. What about Jenna? Jenna Walsh has been having financial problems for the past 2 years. Her real estate business is struggling, she's behind on her mortgage, and she's got credit card debt up to her eyeballs. But about 8 months ago, she suddenly came into some money, paid off her credit cards, caught up on her mortgage, bought a new car. Where did the money come from? That's where it gets interesting. I can't prove it yet, but I think Nolan Pierce has been paying her to set up his affairs. She identifies potential targets, successful, unhappy married women, and then she introduces them to Nolan at parties or social events. She probably gets a percentage of whatever he manages to extract from them. The wrench in my hand was shaking. So Jenna deliberately introduced Sarah to Nolan knowing what would happen? That's my theory. And there's more. Remember how you said Jenna's been very vocal about defending Sarah and making you look like the bad guy? I think that's part of the plan, too. The more isolated and guilty Sarah feels, the more she'll turn to Nolan for support. And the more she turns to him, the more money he can get out of her. Jesus Christ. There's something else, Dave. I followed Nolan yesterday, and he's already moved on to his next target. He's been having lunch with a woman named Carol Stevens. She's a doctor, married, and her husband travels a lot for work. I'm betting Jenna introduced them, too. I sat down heavily on my workbench stool. Sarah wasn't just cheating on me. She was the sufferer of an elaborate con game, orchestrated by her best friend and executed by a professional manipulator. And I was the collateral damage. What about Sarah? Does she know? I don't think so. I think she believes this is a real relationship. She's probably convinced herself that she's in love with this guy, that he's going to leave his life behind and run away with her. But he's not. Hell no! Guys like Nolan Pierce don't leave their comfortable lives behind for anyone. He'll string her along as the money keeps flowing, and then he'll disappear, probably move to another city and start the whole process over again. I thought about Sarah, recovering from her concussion at Jenna's house, probably crying on Jenna's shoulder about her terrible husband who'd thrown her out when she needed him most. And all the while, Jenna was probably encouraging her to call Nolan, to lean on him for support, to trust him with her heart and her bank account. I want proof, I said. I want evidence that Jenna and Nolan are working together, something that will hold up in court. That's going to be tricky. These people are professionals. They're not going to leave a paper trail. Then make them leave one. Set them up somehow. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. That's not exactly legal, Dave. I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking you to give them enough rope to hang themselves. What did you have in mind? I thought about it for a minute. What if we created a new target for them? Someone wealthy and vulnerable? Someone Jenna would want to introduce to Nolan? Like who? Like my sister-in-law, Rebecca. She's been divorced for 2 years, she's got money from her settlement, and she's been feeling lonely lately. If Jenna thinks she can set up another score, she might get careless. Your sister-in-law would have to be in on it. Rebecca hates Sarah right now. She thinks Sarah's an idiot for cheating on me. I bet she'd love to help expose Jenna and Nolan for what they really are. Marcus smiled for the first time since I'd known him. Now that's an interesting idea. Let me think about how we could make it work. After Marcus left, I called Rebecca. She lived about an hour away in the city, and we'd always gotten along well. She was Sarah's younger sister, but they were nothing alike. Rebecca was practical, honest, and had a very low tolerance for BS. Dave, I was just thinking about calling you. How are you holding up? I've been better, Becca. Listen, I need to ask you a favor, a big one. Anything, you know that? I told her about Marcus's investigation, about Jenna's role in Sarah's affair, about the plan to expose them both. Rebecca listened without interrupting, and when I was finished, she was quiet for a long time. That witch, she said finally. Jenna always gave me the creeps, but I never thought she was capable of something like this. Will you help us? Hell yes, I'll help you. What do you need me to do? Just be yourself. Be lonely, be wealthy, and be vulnerable. Let Jenna think she's found another mark for her boyfriend. When do we start? How about this weekend? There's a charity auction at the country club on Saturday night. Sarah and I were supposed to go together, but obviously that's not happening anymore. Jenna will probably be there, working the room and looking for opportunities. I'll be there, Rebecca said. And Dave? I'm really sorry about Sarah. I know you loved her. I did love her, I said. But I'm not sure the woman I loved ever really existed.